Welcome to the Data Product Management in Action podcast, created and executive produced by me, Scott Hirleman, and brought to you by Soda, your best friend in data quality and contracts tooling. We created this podcast to serve as a place for actual practitioners bringing product management practices to data, whether that is to AI and ML, data products, platforms, or everything else in data, right? And it's to dig into the nitty-gritty of product management in data, but in fun and dynamic conversations. It's not just lift and shift from software product management. We have a great set of hosts for you that are also practitioners, so they can really get into those specifics and dive deep and get you the information you want to know rather than just high level, here is what a data product is. This is about cutting through the noise of data product management to drive towards actionable insights, hence the actual podcast name, Data Product Management in Action. So sit back and enjoy another awesome conversation.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Data Product Management in Action podcast. I'm your host, Franny Helfrich, and today we have a very special episode on the podcast. Our guest is none other Nick Zervoudis, one of the hosts of this podcast. Nick is head of product at CK Delta, an AI software business. He oversees a portfolio of data products and works with the sister companies to uncover new opportunities to innovate using data analytics and AI. He recently gone part-time and launched his own company, Value from Data and AI. You can learn all about Nick on our episode 13 and also the ones he has hosted so far, episode 14, 20, and 24. However, there is a good reason that I'm interviewing Nick today, and that is Nick recently launched a new course called Value from Data and AI, How to Demonstrate and Maximize Your Impact. I won't spoil more and let him explain what the course is all about, how did he decide on the content, problems, strategies, and the format. With that intro, hi Nick, how are you doing?
Hi Franny, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for this slightly different episode that we're doing on the podcast.
Same. The name of your company and your course is so exciting, so I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, it's something I've been feeling really passionate about for quite a long time now. I guess I'll start by talking a little bit about the problem that I think exists out there in the world. And for me, it's also why I'm co-hosting this podcast together with you, and why I spend a lot of time writing on LinkedIn and elsewhere about data product management. And it's that data teams are just not very value-centric and business-centric in a lot of organizations. And that's let's say the background problem, but I think it's becoming much more urgent and pressing, or it has become more urgent and pressing in recent years.
Okay. Yeah, I quite agree, but can you elaborate a little bit more about the problem and how did you find it out and how did you go about it?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's a series of mostly macroeconomic trends that are making the situation more challenging for data teams and tech companies more widely. So these are, first of all, we've had inflation and a general increase in the cost of the inputs for most businesses. That's materials, wages, anything that the company needs to run itself, but also an increase in the cost of capital by an increase in interest rates. And what that has kind of translated to is a few different things. First, when it comes to VC-funded firms, there's a diminished appetite to burn money. Fewer VCs are still investing in a lot of companies, but they're being more picky, both about new raises and prolonging their investments in other companies. And a lot of those are companies that either serve data teams or that hire lots and lots of data folks. But it's also had much more, let's say, widely pronounced impacts. Like we've in a lot of markets, there's diminished consumer confidence and diminished consumer spending. And then on the other side of the equation, especially in tech, you're seeing lots and lots of layoffs. And that's happened for a number of reasons. Some of it is because there was overhiring during COVID and they're correcting for it. Some of it is the inflationary pressure of the fact that labor costs and material costs are going up. And some of it, I think, is also kind of AI washing, to be cynical about it, that companies are justifying the layoffs that they're doing by saying, oh, it's because we're going to use AI to be more productive now. And there's some truth to it, but I think there's also a lot of kind of PR, DS as well. And so all of this, which I know sounds like very high level and vague, has real impacts for data teams. It means that for a lot of teams and individuals that previously may have not struggled to get funding or to get more headcount on their teams, they now need to fight for it. As an individual, it means that maybe getting your next pay rise or promotion is something you need to advocate much more loudly for. And in the worst cases, it might not be about, oh, you need to fight to get more, to get promoted, to hire more people, but it might be to justify why you should still exist in your organization. And so that paints, I know it paints quite a gloomy picture, but it's the reality that we need to remember we're living in. And then at the same time, if you have another set of trends around large language models, where they've advanced both technologically, we can do more things and do them much more accurately than we could 3 years ago. But also you've got a lot more awareness and understanding of AI. And some of that is pure hype. Some of that is for good reason, because it's a very promising technology. And so for me, what all of that kind of translates to from the point of view of the data team is that, first off, it's more important than ever that the work you do is contributing to the profitability of your business, because now it's harder to hide behind the hype and vanity metrics and FOMO. Like, you need to be helping your business be more profitable because that's existentially important to your business. But also, secondly, you need to get really good at demonstrating that contribution as well to avoid being either in the extreme targeted for layoffs, or at least not have the necessary investment that you might need to advance forward. And in some ways, the fact that there's a lot of hype around AI is a blessing, because it means now it can be easier to get business leaders to actually listen when it comes to proposing new stuff. But it also means that there's a lot more sort of garbage proof of concepts that someone may want to do or use large language SaaS tools that have recently launched from startups. And so they're either going to be taking your data and doing unsafe things with it, or maybe it's a chatbot that's going to tell your customers to F off or promise them a discount that you can't actually honor, and they take you to court with you. So there's all these different things that for me means that data teams need to get better at two things that historically they've not been so good at and not been asked to do as well. The first is, how do I demonstrate the value I'm contributing to the business? Not in soft and fluffy terms, but often that's purely financial. Like, how much money have I made for my company? How much money have I saved for my company? What kind of maybe fines have I prevented from being incurred? But then also, secondly, it's make sure you're actually doing things of value, because no matter how many tips and tricks you follow to demonstrate value, if all you're working on is reports that don't lead anywhere, or dashboards that no one consults, or a platform that you just migrated to but isn't going to bring any value to the business, well, you're not going to be able to demonstrate very much just because of what it is that you're working on. So for me, it's something that was important 5 and 10 years ago too, but it's gotten way more important now that all the macro pressures are pushing data teams more and more. That's why I wanted to do something about it and start my own business and start my course and help educate people on this topic.
Very, very interesting. So one of the key aspects of the product is that it should bring value, right? And then people work with data products without really thinking about the value part, which is not the actually like a product in definition. So that's very, very valuable that you're doing that. Very interesting. Okay. Who are your users, target audience, who can benefit from your course? Who is this course for and not for?
Yeah, I'll tell you who I started thinking about when I made it. It was data product managers. And that still very much is one of the key target audiences. But what I've discovered through my own personal kind of attempt to get product market fit is that there's a second set of target customers that's just as valid. And that's folks that are either consultants, but focused on data science or analytics and data engineering, or just more generally, folks who are managing data teams. And so I discovered it by accident because I was catching up with the CEO of a kind of small to medium-sized data engineering consultancy in Spain. And it was just because I'd recently moved to Barcelona. I was like, oh, hey, how are you doing? I used to work with people from his team. I was like, let's grab a coffee. And I was just catching him up on, I now have a new job. And also I'm working on this course. He goes, oh, that would be really useful for my team. And in my mind, I was like, oh, but you don't employ data product managers. Why would it be useful to them? And through that subsequent discussion, I realized that I was maybe thinking a little too narrowly that, oh, I need to target data PMs because there's not many courses for data PMs. And so I should create something for them. But actually, a lot of the time, the folks doing that product management work don't have the job title, right? They have the much more general situation of, I need help identifying new opportunities, either for my clients or my internal colleagues. And also I need to be able to demonstrate the ROI of that. If you're a consultant, it's because you need to put together a proposal and get formal approval for it. If you're an internal team, sometimes you need to do a business case. Other times it's just about getting a more informal prioritization of the work accepted. Who it's not for, I would say, it's people that maybe already feel very confident in the topic of identifying opportunities for data and AI initiatives and quantifying its ROI. They're cool to have them as, podcast guests and bring them to the meetups I organize to learn from them. And it's also, I wouldn't say it's like an introductory topic. So if you're not already either a data PM or at least doing some of that work, this is not a career boot camp type thing that, oh, you just finished university, you take this course, and now you'll be ready to be a data product manager. I don't want to make that promise to anyone.
Sorry, I was going to say you need both product knowledge and data knowledge for this, right?
Yeah, at least one of the two. So a lot of the people that were part of the course when I first delivered it for that company that I mentioned, they were much more purely technically focused folks, but they knew data very well. And so it was more about bringing them up to speed on the commercial and product side of thinking. But what really meant that the course was for them was that they could go to their clients the next week and start applying what they've learned. If you take the course and, for example, you're still looking for a job or you're doing a job that's unrelated to this, if you don't apply it, I think, sure, maybe you'll take good notes and you'll be able to think about it in 6 months' time when you do start that job. But the learning is going to be much less powerful. Like literally half the time in the course is interactive sessions where I'm asking people to apply what we're going through in their current project, in their current context. And that's why it's a live session. If it was just me talking, I would record some videos and put them on Udemy or another of those websites where probably people would buy the course and just like what I usually do, watch the first 20% and then give up on it. I didn't want it to be like that. And that's why I'm being very picky about who actually comes on the course. Like I've introduced an application, which is a bit counterintuitive because I'm making it harder for people to sign up because I want to make sure that it's the right fit for them, but also that when they're in those group exercises, they're able to learn from each other as well.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so because you touched on the format of the course, can you explain how is the format and why you chose this part? You touched on it a little bit, but elaborated a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. So it's the kind of formal term is it's a cohort-based course, and that means it all happens live. So the version that I delivered for a company that was in person, the version that's more let's say B2C for people from different companies to all learn together, that's online. And the idea is for me, first of all, that it's live because it's quite interactive. Like there'll be moments where in one cohort, people have one set of questions because they're mostly from, let's say, highly regulated industries, versus in another one, maybe they're from faster moving tech companies. And so the question that we'll focus on will be different. It's also, I wanted it to be live so that I can get feedback in real time about what's relevant and useful, so I can improve the course constantly. But for me, the other reason I think it's really good is because you're learning together with your peers. And there's a lot of kind of evidence in the study of what makes for effective education that shows that really helps. If it's something like explaining something to a peer of yours, or seeing the world through the examples that they might bring to the table. But for me, it has the other benefit of kind of creating the start of a community. Because as product managers, unless if you're in a very large product organization, chances are you're either the only data PM in your company, or at least one of very few. And even if there's more of this role in your company, you're probably not working together. You're probably each running your own separate teams, working on separate products, and maybe you need to collaborate at times when there's some kind of integration you need to figure out. For me, what that means is it's quite a lonely job compared to, for example, I'm a data scientist. There's 2 other data scientists in my team. We peer review each other's code. If one of us is more senior, we can learn from them. They learn by explaining to us. I think that's the reason I also started the data product management meetup in London and now in Barcelona, because it's a really nice thing meeting other people that are kind of doing more or less what you do, share your challenges, and in general that you can kind of problem solve together. Even if it's as simple as knowing that someone else is facing the same struggles as you, knowing that you're not alone, but also getting input from them on how they might be able to tackle those challenges that they're dealing with. That's super powerful. And I wanted that to be part of the course as well.
Okay. Very interesting. What are the number of the people that usually attending, and is there a capacity limit?
Yeah. I'd say that's very much a question that I'll need to kind of work out the answer. I'll tell you, for the first cohort, it was a bit bigger than I thought was the ideal number. I thought ideally it would be 10 to 15 people, but we had 20. And I was a little bit worried about that at first. But actually, I realized because there's a lot of breaking into kind of breakout rooms and having group discussions, it worked okay. Like if it's many more than 20, it would just add more time to everything, because we were going around each group and sharing some of the key learning points and takeaways or individual examples. So if it was more than 20, I would have to rethink the format. But for now, I want the cohorts to be anywhere between 5 and 20, maybe 5 and 25 people.
And what are you covering in the course? What are the topics that you're covering?
Good question. I love how I've been talking about it all this time, but didn't actually get to what it actually is about. So there's 2 modules. The first is on opportunity discovery, and the second is on opportunity valuation. And so what that means is discovery is, if you're a product manager, hopefully a very standard practice that is about doing the work before any lines of code start getting written. It's much more than just scoping or requirements gathering, because traditionally when kind of technical teams and data teams do that, it's very much focused around what does the solution look like. For me, discovery needs to start a step before, which is what is the problem we're looking to solve? And given that an organization is probably going to have a number of different problems that we could solve, which ones should we actually focus in on? And then only after you've worked out what the problem space looks like together with your team and your stakeholders, then you start thinking about the solution. And that can be a real kind of mindset shift for a lot of people that are very used to asking discovery questions on the solution side of things. Like, do you want the data cut by day or by week? And do you want it to refresh every hour or once a week? And should we include these other columns? And, what charts should the dashboard have? But for me, if you're not super laser clear on the problem, one, the discovery questions you'll ask for the solution are going to risk missing the mark. But two, you might risk working on something that, yeah, you can deliver it with technical excellence, but it might just not move the needle for the business. It might not meaningfully impact revenue or cost or risk, which are the things that ultimately you should be very confident you're going to be impacting with. So that's the first module. That's discovery. And it's the one I wrote second, because when I started writing the course, I was like, oh, I want this to be purely about how do you demonstrate the ROI of data work. But then I realized actually so much of it comes down to just to make sure you're working on things that deliver value. That I was like, okay, this is a module of its own. At first, it was just like one of the 5 or 6 strategies that I'd written out for valuation. But then I was like, no, we need to start with that. And then valuation is, like the name suggests, like how do you put a dollar sign figure next to different opportunities? And so I go through a few of the strategies that have worked really well for me, some of which I learned when I was in consulting, some of which I've learned more recently by learning from other data product folks. And for me, it's very much about accepting that despite our data profession being very heavy on rigor and being scientific and using real data to calculate numbers, actually a lot of the time valuation is almost the opposite. It starts with a back of the envelope calculation. It starts with saying, okay, is this a 1 to 5 million opportunity? Is it a 20 to 30 million opportunity? Or is it a 50K opportunity? Because even if you get that number horribly wrong, and instead of 1 million, it turns out to be 800,000, or it turns out to be 5 million later down the line as you refine your assumptions, the important thing is mostly the order of magnitude, or roughly the amount. That helps with prioritization, but it also helps with figuring out, okay, it looks like this opportunity is small enough that it's not worth pursuing at this stage. Or it looks like roughly this project is going to cost us, let's say, double what we think it might result in terms of benefits, even in the most optimistic scenario. And that's something that I think software PMs are much more comfortable doing, partly because they don't have a data background usually. But for data people starting to think as product people, it's another mental leap that you have to make. And so we go through what that looks like and how it involves talking to lots of people to basically get to that answer.
Great. Very, very interesting. I'll sign up right now. Okay. And speaking of that, so you schedule it in a time zone that it covers most of the time zones, like North American, European, right? And middle is somewhere around those time zones. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, that was a hard one, partly because I didn't know who would sign up. But yeah, I know that most of the people that I know and who know me either live in Europe or in North America. And so it kind of starts at around, I think it's 1 p.m. UK time, which is 8 a.m. Eastern time. It's a little bit early if you're on the Pacific coast. And then similarly, if you're in more east, like in India, you kind of start around your late afternoon, early evening, and finish a bit late, but not unreasonably late. So apologies to anyone that's in Australia or New Zealand. This course, unless if you're a total night owl, is maybe not going to be for you, at least not this cohort. Yeah, that's because I really wanted to have that international mix as well and get examples from folks in different organizations. And so the signups for January so far are, I think, like a 50-50 between European countries and folks in North America. And we've had a couple that are more on the Pacific side, so we might slightly nudge the hours just to make it easier for everyone to attend, but only if everyone's okay with that.
Awesome. And lastly, where people can find it.
Yeah. So if you go on my LinkedIn, it's hopefully the first thing that's kind of featured on my profile, or you can just write out course.valuefromdata.ai. I've made a kind of little shortcut that goes there, but it's through a platform called Maven. And maybe I should have talked about Maven a little bit when we're talking about the format, but they're the pioneers of this cohort-based course as a format. The founders of Maven used to have built other edtech companies in the past, and they've really realized that this mix of live and online really ends up being the most powerful way for people to learn. And I've previously taken courses on Maven, and I mean, was it more expensive than buying a course on Udemy? Yes, but I got multiples of that in terms of return on investment from them. So I knew from the start that I wanted to use them as the platform. I really like the tools that they give, both for me to create the course, but also for everyone that's taking part in it. And in general, like I often just can't shut up about cohort-based courses as a format, regardless of whether someone's interested in my course specifically. So I'd also just go on maven.com and see all the different courses that they've got on offer, and the awesome folks that are teaching them.
That is great. Thank you so much. Thanks, Nick, for explaining everything about your course. It sounds very interesting. I really encourage people to check it out. And we will link any useful link to this podcast episode, including your LinkedIn. And have a great rest of the day.
Thanks for having me, Sarni. Really, really excited about it, and really excited that I got to talk about it with you. Hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully you got some great actionable insights out of this episode. We're so excited to dig deeper into data product management and its many facets. If you want to engage more with the show, you can follow us on LinkedIn and check out Soda's website at soda.io for more related content around product management in data. And if you are a practitioner bringing product management practices to data and want to potentially be a guest, please check the show notes for a link to apply. And as always, we strongly encourage people from underrepresented groups in tech to apply. Much as I'm a handsome devil, we don't want all our guests only looking like me. So again, let's get excited for more digging into data product management in action.